Hey guys, Jessica here. What comes to your mind when someone tells you, "Oh, hey, you look Korean"? Do you take it as a compliment? Or, that was very offensive. Or, nothing comes to your mind. Specifically for the Philippines, when you search "you look Korean Philippines" on Google, many people would consider that as a compliment because Koreans often stand for being beautiful. In simple words, that would mean that the Korean beauty standard somehow matches the Filipino beauty standard, which are having a fair skin to the point that it looks like glass, having a sharp jawline, big dolly eyes, and you know how in the Filipino culture, although it's slowly changing now, having a fair skin was also one of the biggest factors of a beauty standards in the Philippines. So here you could say that the Korean and the Filipino beauty standards are similar in a way that we both historically and culturally have the tendency to prefer fair skin because it's not only about being beautiful, it's not only about the skin color itself, but it's also about their social standing. However, now the situation is totally different. Skin color is not about your social status. Skin color is not about your beauty. It's just a part of you. It's just what makes you you. That's why the phrase "you look Korean" can even be considered racist or very offensive to a certain extent. Now let's try to shift the perspective a bit. So me as a Korean, so in the Philippines I'm a foreigner. If someone tell me "you look Filipino," is that a compliment or something very offensive to me? It of course usually depends on in what tone and manner that person said that to me. If she or he said it in a way that, "Oh, you look Filipino because of your accent, because of your skin color," and if I know that he or she does not have any harsh or evil intention behind what he or she said, then I don't feel anything. I'm like, "Oh, okay." Sometimes I would even say thank you, like, "Oh, thank you." But then some people would kind of say that with some sarcasm, like, "You look Filipino." Then of course I would be a little... In the first place, why would you tell someone or describe someone's face, someone's look with a certain race? There are so many other beautiful adjectives out there to describe someone, but why should it be a particular race? The same thing goes for "you look Korean," among other beautiful words that you could use to describe that person or to compliment that person. Why is it "you look Korean"? Why "you look Filipino" in particular? In Korea, generally, when you say, "Oh, you look like a foreigner," foreigner in the sense of like white foreigner, usually people take it as a compliment because for hundreds of years, Koreans have been idolizing those Western look. But when you say, "Oh, you look Filipino" in Korea to a Korean, or "you look Vietnamese," "you look like Southeast Asian," then many people would take it either as a joke or something funny, not a compliment. And it's honestly really, really weird. In the first place, again, why would you bring up a certain race to describe someone's face? Second of all, why is it that their reactions are different? And of course, there are so many reasons behind it. The main one would be the kind of reputation that that race or that country has to the person. But the tricky thing here is that the impression that that person has to those countries is different from other people. For example, the impression I have of the Philippines is so different from just like a normal Korean who has never been to the Philippines. But in the Philippines, with the phrase "you look Korean" plays a little different role because the Philippines as a country has such a big interest to the country of Korea. In 2018, the Philippines had the highest growth rate of Hallyu fans among 113 countries. So you can really tell how much the Philippines love Korea in general. And the main reason for that, I think, has to be the kind of cultural connection, cultural similarities that both Korea and the Philippines have. So I even mentioned it in the video over here. Go watch it if you haven't watched it. So the stories from K-drama can be very relatable to Filipinos, and overall, culturally, the Philippines and Korea has lots of similarities. And of course, we cannot forget about K-pop, how K-pop is so influential to so many people around the world because of its diversity, because of its never-ending fresh and new concepts and the energy that you can get from it. It's just overwhelmingly huge. So okay, we both know the growing love and interest for Korea that the Philippines have. But now the question is that enormous love that the Filipinos have towards Korean culture giving the the Philippines, their country, positive or negative impacts. To talk about the possible negative impacts is we have to bring up the keyword of cultural imperialism, which means the imposition by one usually politically or economically dominant community of various aspects of its own culture onto another non-dominant community. And of course, the cultural imperialism itself may create positive impacts, like, you know how American movie studios or productions are very successful by itself, and as foreign cultural institutions adopt that successful business models, they can be also successful as well. However, the negative impact of it would be something like the spread of Western ideals of beauty, resulting to a possible decline of local cultures around the whole world. And I think the idea of you look Korean, you look Filipino directly fit into this. When you mean, oh, you look Korean to your Filipino friend and you meant it as a compliment, and that's you kind of acknowledging that Koreans are the ideals of beauty, so you look Korean, so you're beautiful. That's like limiting a certain beauty standard into one frame, whether it was done as a compliment or not. Just bringing up the idea of nationality here, I think it could result to much bigger social stereotypes, toxic stereotypes in the future. The other positive impact that I could think of is just simply putting it, if you digging into Korean culture makes you happy, then that's it. If you just like it, if you just feel just naturally attracted to it and it makes you happy, then that's all you need. Unless you are trying to abandon your own culture, like your own Filipino culture, because your love for Korean culture is so big. Of course, that wouldn't be ideal, but while still being connected to your own heritage, your own local culture, and at the same time having an admiration towards other culture, I think it's very healthy. It's also the process of broadening your interests and perspective, but as much it can have positive impacts on you and for the whole country itself, it could also lead to some negative impacts. I think that's just what I wanted to highlight. So with the Philippines' growing interest for Korean culture, what kind of mindset should we have, should the Filipinos have in order to kind of find the middle line between preserving and still learning and respecting your own culture and having admiration towards Korean culture? Keyword here, I think, is respect. Respect to your own, respect to others. And this is just something that's applied in any situations, as you guys all know. You can't start a conversation with someone if in the first place you don't have any respect to each other. When you have the respect, then love can grow from that point. And as love grows from that point, you can have more understanding, you can be more accepting to each other's cultures. So I think that having respect is the key word that we should have in mind. And now I want to ask you guys, should we keep taking the adjective of other race or nationality to describe someone's physical looks, even if it's done as a compliment? Or should we stop doing that, even if you meant as a compliment, because it may include some racist elements in it? Showing love is always good, but sometimes that act of showing love can lead to the destruction of love for your own self, your own country sometimes. So I think we should always strive to find the balance between where we are and how we should show love. I hope we always stay curious in these kind of matters, the ones that involve our culture, media, history, and society. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on this video in the comments down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.